All right, what's up, everybody? Good to be back. We got a lot to talk about. Well, I mean, we got some to talk about. Obviously, Icelander left the format, and that kind of freed up a lot of opportunity, sideboard space for other decks. Uh, we're going to talk about a little bit about that. Not too terribly long. I don't think there's a whole lot to discuss. I'm just going to kind of give my macro analysis of like where the meta is heading, kind of situation, and just go from there, right? Like that's the plan. And then the topic for today is I'm gonna share with everybody kind of like my technique on reading people. Um, I was kind of hesitant to do this topic because anybody that's ever played a game of Flesh and Blood with me, I'd love to do a lot of banter and stuff like that. And the reason that I do the banter is not to leverage an advantage. That is not why I participate in that type of gameplay. Um, but I do it because I enjoy it, right? I think everybody just has a better time doing so, and it's a better experience. And I thought that there might be some people that watch this and be like, okay, if I play against Nathan and I engage in this banter, he's not gonna, or he's gonna get a read, right? And that's just not true because actually the banter makes it more difficult to get a read because the banter acts outside of the normal baseline, which we're going to get into on how to analyze. Um, so I was kind of hesitant to do this because I want people to engage in banter when they play against me because I enjoy it, and most people that play against me have told me that they enjoyed it. I don't want that to go away, or people think that I'm trying to game them by talking to them and stuff like that. Where you read the signals is in between the banter, subtle acts. If you notice within a game, I'll get real quiet out of nowhere, and it's because I'm picking up on something and kind of like thinking the thought process of it and stuff like that. Uh, I'm going to go into exactly what my process is, some of the things that I look out for. This isn't going to be, oh, you got to like look them in the eye and tell them that they don't have pummel or anything like that. It's all actionable stuff, right? Things that you can pick up on. I will say that I have a long history of playing poker, and that does give me an advantage in doing this because a lot of it carries over, right? Like it's very similar, right? And with that being said, it is kind of taxing on the memory a little bit. Uh, there is an opportunity cost there, but once you get used to doing it and you looking out for certain things, it gets a lot easier. So it's one of those things where it seems exhausting when you first do it, kind of situation for some people. Some people won't phase them at all, but as you do it, you just kind of like just look for it without even looking for it, kind of situation. Um, I consider reading my opponent one of my strongest advantages of being a Flesh and Blood player. I think it's one thing that I probably do. I don't know everybody. I haven't played against everybody, but I'm 90% sure that I'm one of the best that does it. Just from my experiences, and people have kind of told me about that, and the feedback that I've gotten on being right and wrong. I will share towards the end. There is one person that I've never been able to get a read on. I'm going to share who that is at the conclusion of the stream. But there's one person that I've never been able. I've played them several times in tournaments, and I've never been able to get a read. Not a single one. And I've really tried. So I'm going to share who that is toward the end. But I just think that there's a lot of advantage to be gained in very small situations, right? I'm going to give you an example to start things off, to kind of start the discussion. I'm just going to kind of talk about Yes, we're going to talk about TCG player reads. Uh, and we're going to. I'm going to give you an example that happened at Worlds. My game against Michael Hamilton. I'm going to go through some of the reads that I got on him and basically explain to you how I came to those conclusions, how I was 100% accurate. If you want to fact check me, ask him yourself the next time you see him, whatever. I was right every single time in 3 guesses, basically. Um, and so, and it's small stuff. But so I'm going to kind of give the example and then I'm going to break it down because it's not as simple as, oh, their pulse rate is elevated or they're breathing heavy, so they have something really strong. It's not that simple because you have to establish a baseline on your opponent. And then certain things like pulse rate and heavy breathing and stuff like that can indicate which direction of the spectrum that tail is giving you, right? So it's a little bit more in depth than just, oh, look for a heavy pulse. That's part of it. That is part of it, but you have to combine that with a baseline to get what we're going to refer to as a tail on an opponent, okay? Or reading an opponent. So I'm going to give you an example. It was the round before last I matched against Michael Hamilton. Those of you who saw the Twitter, it's one of like the best games I've played as far as just like, I had a really good time. I lost the game. We're going to skip past that part, but it was a great game, a lot of banter, stuff like that. But there were a lot of key moments that put that game a lot closer on my end because I was able to make certain reads, okay? And obviously, it was a Guardian Mirror. We were both playing Bravo. So a lot of those reads revolved around Pummel. And for those of you who don't know, Michael Hamilton was running a Tunic-based list for Bravo. Which makes reading Pummel way more difficult, right? And so basically the situation was, because everybody knows that if Bravo doesn't dominate and holds 2 cards, that it's Pummel, right? Or if they have 2 resources floating, they chose not to dominate. Like that's easy stuff to read. You don't need to read your opponent. That's just reading the dice, right? That's pretty simple stuff. This is more talking about picking up on small, minute signs that indicate whether they possibly have something. And some of it has nothing to do with guessing Pummel at all. Some of it is getting a read on how strong their hand is, which would indicate it being more conducive for you to engage in a certain activity or not. So let's go to the Hamilton game. There was one point in the game where he had. So first, let's talk about the 2 things. I've kind of mentioned it before, but you have to combine 2 aspects to come to the conclusion of a tail, right? You have to have the read or the tail plus the baseline, and that gives you a result, right? So my baseline on Michael Hamilton is basically, I go into it, I know that he's really smart. He's a very strong player. Also, I know he's one of the people that like keeps track of pitch stacks, so I can automatically assume that he's very good at, he has a good memory, stuff like that. I can safely make those assumptions about Michael in those games, right? So that establishes my baseline. Okay? So there was one point in the game where he had a Pummel floating opportunity. Okay? And I had the correct read that he had it because in my data point that I was using was in 2.5 turn cycles, he did not look at his arsenal one time. Okay, now I know what you're thinking. How the hell does that mean that Michael had Pummel? Well, I have a theory that in Flesh and Blood, The frequency at which an opponent checks the card in Arsenal can mean one of two things. Okay? Either if they check it less frequently, then the card is unlike any other card in the deck. Okay? Or they check it more frequently because it is a high investment card. This could be like max velocity and dash, among other things, right? But that's also another thing. Smoke is bringing up a perfect point. Uh, you have to. That's where you have to get the baseline, right? I knew that Hamilton has to have like a really good memory, right? So, and that's why the baseline is so important, because some people just look at it all the fucking time. Like, that is very normal activity. But with the established baseline, I was able to get a read because I know he has a good memory and he wasn't looking at it. So I made the assumption that he didn't look at the Arsenal because it was Pummel, because Pummel is unlike any other card in Bravo, right? If Spinal's down there, you check it sometimes to make sure it's not crippling, crush, things like that, right? For the situation of like how many resources you need to invest in that card. If it's Pummel, it's a static, right? There's no other card like it that, oh, is it the card that costs 5 or the card that costs 7? Like, there's no delineation, right? It's unlike any other card in the deck. And so he played a Zealous Belt and had 1 floating on Tunic. I blocked 1 card plus 2 in armor. He played Pummel and I played my Fate Foreseen. We're rolling, right? Correct call. We're good. And then comes situation number 2. He plays the CNC Pummel. Or the CNC with the 1 floating on Tunic about a few turns later. He once again has not checked his Arsenal, so I have the same read. I was right before, so I was like, why not double down? And I didn't have, well, I had the D-Rack, but it doesn't really do a lot of good against CNC, right? So I used my crown to filter it away, and we avoided that situation, right? He did have the Pummel at that time. So then later in the match, actually, there was 1 spot in between those two, right? So that was the last event Pummel situation that happened, and then there was 1 in the middle. So only 1 Pummel had been shown in his deck, and there was 1 situation where he played the CNC, had the 1 floating, but he had checked his Arsenal both the turn before and the turn that he played it. And so that gave me the chance to say, look, I don't think you have it here. And I literally, with a card in Arsenal, I just said block 6, and he said pass reactions. And I said, all right, cool. So we got it right. And then he had it the 3rd time. So we were 3 for 3, right? And Michael started picking up on this because we were engaging in a lot of banter. And I was like, Michael, I got to read on you. Like, come on, you got to step it up. And so there was 1 point in the game, and this is how you have to know Michael's a genius player. There was 1 point where I gave him a quicken token with my Civic Steps, and he was playing E-Strike, and so he basically blocks down his hand to where he has E-Strike in 1 card, and he goes E-Strike, draw a card. He specifically leaves the card on the table so I can't get the read on whether he drew the blue to swing hammer or not. Which was very, very smart. And he intentionally like told me that. He said, I'm not going to look at it until you block, so you don't know, whether I drew the blue or not. And that was the correct answer, because I'm 100% positive that if I could have seen like his posture and stuff like that, that I would have been able to indicate whether he drew the red or the blue, and then kind of made my blocking decision better, right? Knowing whether there was more damage coming down the line or not. So he actually prevented a tail by doing that. That's another piece that, you guys can use in a situation like that. Do not look at your card until your opponent declares blocks or whatever. because that card's not going to change. There's no advantage of looking at that card 15 seconds sooner, unless you're just risk going to time and you need to make decisions like super quick. But it's small things like that. So that's kind of an example. I'm gonna try to give you guys a lot more examples on like what different tails you can use, what are some things that mean certain things like that. So also, like I said earlier, you have your tails and your baseline, okay? Another thing that can be used as a baseline, you can use history of the player. You can use tendencies of the players, whatever factor you want to use. But you can also use game state. Okay? So for example, let's say I have a read on my opponent that he is kind of slouching a little bit, maybe seems a little disinterested in the game. That could be a read of he is not very strong. It could mean that he doesn't have a good hand. He's disappointed, kind of situation, right? However, if we're in a game state where he's 20 life behind, it doesn't matter what he draws. It's a very real possibility that that will be his posture, right? And that's something that you have to weigh into the equation, right? You can't just say, oh, he's slouching, his hand sucks. It's not that simple, right? You have to say, does he have a reason to slouch other than his hand sucking? And if the answer is no, then you can maybe come to that conclusion. And there was actually a game during the first round, or in US Nats where we were drafting Uprising. There was a match that I had where anybody who played Uprising draft knows that you were just doomed if you went first in the Fire Mirror. Well, I played it in a Fire Mirror, and I had to that's why Kano is so hard to read. They're always 20 life behind. Yes, but there's also that is very true. However, their posture means a lot. It means how close they are, right? Like how tentatively are they looking at their cards as they draw them, kind of would indicate how desperate they are or how much in a commanding position they are and things like that. But I was in a Fire Mirror and I lost the die roll, and of course he made me go first in this match in US Nats. And this was for the pod. This was to determine who's going 3-0. So pretty important match. And basically, when I drew my hand up, anybody that's played/watched professional poker, I'm talking about like really high stakes. You know, if you've ever watched it, I don't know if you have noticed, but when they deal out the cards, right? Everybody gets their cards approximately at the same time, just a hair of a second, between each other, right? The dealers are really fast. They just throw out all the cards, done, right? Does everybody look at their cards at the same time? Absolutely not. What happens? It's the turn player's action. They look at their card, do their action, and then the next person looks at their card. Why doesn't everybody look at their cards as soon as they get them? It's because they are trying to get tails on the person as they look at their hand as a possible indication of how strong their hand is. So what I did was I leveraged the same concept. I noticed that when he drew his card, he kind of sighed and kind of like just slouched a little bit and just did not seem interested. So it was conventional wisdom that in the Fire Mirror, if you did have to go first, it was usually a positive EV play to kind of attack into him, because you can usually leak a damage or two and still arsenal. That was, if you could do that, which my hand did allow me to do so. However, I chose to just arsenal and pass. and he drew 3 blues, and I won that game because I had the read that his hand sucked, and instead of leaking damage, I just let him have it and ended up being correct. Now, you know, that's how that situation played out. It happened that I was correct and it was awesome, but it's small things like that that can turn a severely disadvantaged situation into one that's winnable. Because I mean, I would say that the win percentage is like 20% if you go first, probably. It's very, very difficult to win the Fimir if you go first. Very hard unless you do like a whatever that ward card was first up or whatever the case may be. Also, one other thing, anybody that has natural confidence, it's a very good trait that masks being able to read a tell on somebody. Anybody that's extremely confident and you know they're confident, it's very difficult to get a read. It basically has to do with mannerisms. People that are confident are more consistent in what they do because they know that they're doing it. They know why they're doing it because they are confident, right? Which indirectly means that that you basically can't. It's harder to see differences in actions that they're committing when they are confident. So be wary of opponents that just seem like they have a lot of confidence because it's very, very difficult to get a tell on them. Do you find it more difficult to read your opponent's blocks or next attacks? That's a great question, Ryan. Basically, I don't think it's either or. I think that it's not blocks or attacks. For me, 90% when you're talking about that specific stage of the game, I don't think it's what they block, how they block, or anything like that. I think the most important data point is the time it takes for them to reach their decision. So if you basically snap, okay, so you tell me what is more information, right? Let's say I'm playing against a 5 player, right? Or not, 5 is probably a bad example. Let's say Briar's still legal and I'm playing against a Briar player just because we're going to live back in the good days of Flesh and Blood. Let's say I throw like a really good attack at them that's like super efficient, a lot of damage, and they instantly say no blocks. Instantly, okay? Compare that situation to they block with X card. Doesn't matter. They block with Scar for Scar and Force of Nature. Which one gives you more information? The one that they actually show you some of the cards in your hand, or the fact that they made a split-second decision on whether they were blocking or not? I would argue they're playing Channel Mount Heroic the next turn because they made an instantaneous decision. It means whatever was in their hand or at their disposal was so strong that they instantly discounted a whole half aspect of the game to make said decision. So in relation to like blocks or next attacks or anything like that, I think it's more so about how quickly they make the decision. On the attack side of things, that's a little different because a lot of people preemptively design the line that they're going to take. So you can't really get a good read on like how quickly they play an attack. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. There are some tales where people, the stronger their hand is or the better their line is, they'll snap their cards a little bit more than they normally would. Just as a it feels good to do this, so I'm gonna like let you know kind of thing. I don't know. I've just noticed that a lot of players do that. The stronger the hand, the stronger the line, the more nuanced the line, the flashier the line, like a flash in Revel and Rune Blood kind of situation, right? They just like pop that card as soon as they lay it down. We all know it as TCG players. That little right when they lay it down, they just snap the end of it. We've all seen it, right? And that's a good example of either the line is kind of flashy, cool, like, hey, I came up with this line, or it's just super strong. Is kind of what those can tell you. That that's the conclusion that you can reach on those. I wouldn't say that it's more difficult to read opponent's blocks or next attacks. I think next attacks is more just knowing your opponent's hero and what they're trying to do, rather than I don't think there's tails that lead to next attacks that I can come up with. But I'm more than willing to hear if somebody has one. So, like I said before, anybody that has natural, legit confidence is very hard to get tails on them. Just a warning. It can really mess you up. It's just very difficult to get those reads. The first thing that you really have to do, and so Michael Hamilton is a very, I would say, community known figure in Flesh and Blood, right? So I walked into that game when I gave the examples of what happened in that game with a lot of prior knowledge to establish my baseline on Michael himself. Strong player, great memory, things of that nature, right? You don't have that with every single opponent you play. It's really like content creators and like pro players and stuff like that you can kind of walk into the game with said knowledge, right? Everybody else, you kind of just have to start from scratch, right? And that's okay. So what you can do is you just establish baselines, and all it means is you're keeping track of things that they normally do. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're playing against a Bravo, and for 9 turns in a row, they had 2 floating, but never mentioned it. And out of nowhere, they say 2 floating. That could be a tail, right? I think a good example is trying to read your opponent drew off of their Art of War. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anytime that you can look at your opponent as they are drawing cards is single-handedly one of the best points to get a read. You can see how strong it is, how disappointed they look, a lot of things. Anytime they're drawing cards. I'm specifically, especially if I go first in any game of Flesh and Blood, I will always watch my opponent draw their cards and look at their hand before I do so. Because I think there's so much information to be gained. So we're just trying to establish and recognize patterns in our opponent to establish a baseline. Okay. Now let's get into some signs that some of these are super basic, some of them a little bit less so. But kind of, what are some of the tells? What are some of the things that we're looking for? I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite ones, because unless you are actively trying to disguise it, it's easily the hardest one to cover up. And that is somebody's heart rate / pulse is definitely one of the best tells. Now, you have to be who has been the most fun read. I have a story, Jason, and it's such a good story. It technically wasn't a read, but sometimes you just ask questions and you get answers, right? So I was playing a game against Damien. Jason, you know Damien. He's a local to the Huntsville area. And this is kind of cheap. It's not really a read, but the most fun to read was the one person I can't read, and I'll tell that story toward the end. But I'm gonna tell this one too, just because it's funny. Um, so I was playing against Damien, and I was playing Briar, and he was playing Fi. I chose to go first, and I like played a this round's on me. He took a little damage and then clapped back at me with like a 5-card hand. Well, he arsenaled at the end of his turn with 5 cards because he was going second. He took a little bit of damage to hold that extra card. And cause it wasn't that much damage. So I just asked him, I was like, hey, Damien, I'm just curious, which card did I give you on when I played the this round's on me? He goes, oh, the snatch. And I said, Damien, you didn't play a snatch. And he just looks down at his arsenal. And he said, oh, shit. So he just told me he had snatch and arsenal, basically. So I guess sometimes it never hurts to ask a question. Sometimes you might get the answer you're looking for, whether directly or indirectly. But I will tell you a funny story with the person that I've never been able to get a read on at the end. I'll give you a hint. He's a great Azalea player, and I've never been able to get a read on him. So yeah, going back to the pulse. The pulse, obviously, heavy breathing. The pulse, for those of you who don't know, in the neck, you can usually see somebody's pulse if it's elevated. And we have to be careful, right? So we can't say elevated pulse. An elevated pulse can mean one of two things. Either somebody's in a stressful situation or an uncomfortable situation, or two, they're excited, right? One of those two things is happening if somebody is sitting down and has an elevated pulse than normal. And that's why it's super important to kind of hang on, Professor Nathan. Professor Nathan, how would you handle sitting across from Dash IO since they look at the top of their deck constantly? Anytime they're looking at the top of the deck, I'm looking at them. Although in that situation, it doesn't really matter, because if there is something good on top, it's gonna get played. So like there's no like advantage of knowing really that the top card's an item or not. So in that particular situation, I just don't really care, to be honest. But yeah, the pulse. Going back to the pulse. So when somebody's pulse is elevated, they're either in a stressful situation or uncomfortable, or they're excited, okay? So we have to kind of dig deep and kind of think of, do they have a visible reason that they're excited? Do they have one where they are basically, I'm never looking at my cards without playing? Hey, that gives me an advantage, right? Because you don't know what you're playing, right? You can't come up with a line if you're not looking at your cards. So basically, if you can look at the game state and establish, like, let's build a scenario where like they're way ahead, right? It's an important match. Their pulse is going to be elevated because they are winning and they're in a commanding position and it's an important match, right? The level at which you're playing for, if it's a winning in for top 8 at a calling, everybody's base pulse will be elevated. Those are factors you have to consider. Whereas, right, when adrenaline kicks in, and adrenaline can be either a fight or flight mechanism or you're excited, right? So, when the Adderall kicks in, I thought you said adrenaline. Yeah, that too. Gonna kindly ask the opponents for wrist. Vero, just look at their neck, bro. Look at their breathing. It's not that hard. Holy. So yeah, you don't have to ask for their wrist. Not required. And if once again, if you've ever seen poker and you've ever seen those people that wear the hoodies and they specifically like cover up their neck like that, that's actively what they're doing. Is they're pulling their shirt away so you can't see how much their chest is moving, how heavy the breathing is, and they're also hiding their neck to make it where you can't see. Can't see. I mean, actually, Vero actually has a good point with this one. You do have to, you kind of have to factor in the like if somebody was just running to their seat and they don't seem to be in the best shape, obviously they're going to be at a higher pulse, right? But once again, you're not looking for a pulse rate of X. You're just looking for changes in said pulse. So if the person is breathing perfectly fine and all of a sudden they start breathing a little heavier or stuff like that, that's where you get the information. Is my opponent's beats per minute? Yeah. If only. So going back to the game state of like the favorable position in the pulse, right? If there's a clear reason that they have to be excited, right? Like maybe they're ahead by 15, 20 life. It's the winning in for a top 8 of the calling. A situation like that. And so that, that situation, he has a very clear and decisive reason to have an elevated pulse, right? Or they. I keep saying he. It could be whoever. And so they have no reason other than, or they could have another reason, but there's a very clear reason that they could have it, right? So therefore, we couldn't lean into that knowledge. I guess you could, but it's very risky to do so. But let's look at a situation where basically you have a situation where the game's very close, it's a high stakes game, and all of a sudden they just kind of perk up a little bit, their shoulders go back, right? Their posture's fixed, they're more straight up, right? I've seen another big one is when people like are sitting a little bit far away from the table, not like super far, but like they'll scoot their chair up. Okay? That is sign language for I'm about to get in that ass. I don't know if anybody knew that, but like that is literally what that translates to every single time. Easiest tell on the planet. If somebody ever draws their cards and scoots their chair up, they're getting in that ass. Okay? That's simple. Easy peasy. Don't have to factor in anything. Fuck baselines. It's just a fact. That's what's going to happen. Okay? I already know it. The next person I play at like the Realm 20K, they're gonna scoot their chair up like the first turn every single time. That'd be good. Boom grenade off the top, something in a few times can be punishing if you're deciding not to block. That's true. That would probably be the one situation where you can get a read off them looking at the top card. And in that situation, another indication, anytime somebody has a feeling of something good happening to them, they have an inclination to smile. Okay, and it's not, they're not just gonna, they don't look at the boom grenade and that's not gonna happen, right? It's not that obvious, right? But what you can do is you can look at the top end of their cheekbones, and if it picks up at all, that is an indication. That is like your body's like first natural reaction on wanting to smile is an increase in your elevation in your cheekbones. That's like the giveaway, right? And so you could leverage something like that to kind of say, okay, were they excited? Another thing is look at the breathing, right? That's a great scenario that you mentioned. They look at the top card and then they start you notice that the breathing gets a little heavy and stuff like that, then joke's on you, got PTSD. I mean, it's anything's possible, Vera. Anything's possible. Uh, so yeah, I think we've talked about pulse plenty, right? You kind of have to establish the baseline. Ask yourself, do they have a reason to have an elevated pulse that's apparent? There may not be. It could be they could be stressed out for some reason, and that's why we're looking for changes. We're not just looking for elevated pulse, he's got gas, right? Like nothing like that. It's just at one point are they more calm, and does something change suddenly? And those are the things that we're looking for. Those are the things that we're trying to identify. Another thing, this one is very so when I mentioned pulse, I said it was one of the best indicators because it's very hard to manage as the defending player, right? It's very hard to mask those tells in regards to like elevated pulse or your heart rate, right? For a sudden, this next one though is going to be basically your it's the exact opposite. Pulse is very hard to hide. This one is kind of easy, and a lot of people intentionally mislead with this one, and that is where people focus their eye contact. It is a big one. What do I mean by that? Basically, let's say you have a situation where you're playing against a guardian and everybody's just worried about CNC pummel, right? It's the number one thing you're worried about. If you notice your opponent is looking at the tunic counter more often than not, especially if it's on 2 and about to go to 3, and they check it like multiple times, that's an indicator, right? They keep making eye contact with their tunic counter. Are they holding their hand over there to make sure that they don't miss it? Can give you an indication on whether they intend to use it the next turn. It can be very indicative of how important that counter is in the very near future, right? If you got a big pummel CNC play coming up, you definitely do not want to miss your tunic. How do you make sure that you don't miss your tunic? You pay more attention to it. It's a natural reaction, something that you are trying to pay more attention to. You look at it more. It's super simple, right? Makes perfect sense. Another easy one is, but people like, I've seen people like look at their Snapdragon scalers when they had no intention to use them, stuff like that. So you have to be careful to not get too stepped on that one. And you have shaky, sweaty hands. That one's pretty easy. I think everybody knows that one. I don't think it's one that needs to be delved in too deep. But just know that can just be somebody being nervous. It cannot necessarily be indicative of, any particular hand strength or anything like that. So I don't like to give shaky hands or sweaty hands or anything like that a lot of I don't like to give it a lot of weight. It's not one of the things that I like to use. Just know it's out there and it can be used. Also, we mentioned earlier the speed at which somebody comes to a decision is more important than the decision that is made. That's one of my favorites. I think I've said it on the channel before, actually. It's just one that really works for me. I factor it in way more than almost anything else, how quickly they come to that decision. It's very, very important. As a player, one of the things that you can do to counter that is never, Brody Spurlock does it the best, right? You don't know whether his hand's ass or it's gas he's still taking 45 minutes to do it. Right? And I'm exaggerating, right? He's not the quickest player. He's very methodical. It goes in the tank a lot, and it's working for him, right? But like, it's hard to get that read on him. I personally have never played Brody, so hint, he's not the one that I can't get a read on because I've never played him. But that's one of the things that you have to consider in the baseline, right? You have to know that about Brody before you walk in there and say, oh, this dude's taking forever. His hand sucks, and he just kills you. So it's something that you'd have to kind of be cognizant of. Also, we talked about it in the Hamilton story. Basically, how often the opponent checks the arsenal can be very indicative of what type of card it is. This could come in the form of, like I mentioned earlier, for those of you who missed it, basically I was able to get a read on Michael by him not checking the arsenal hardly at all. I was able to land on that the arsenal was Pummel because Pummel is unlike any other card in the deck. Is basically how I came to that conclusion. And then once he was checking his arsenal, I knew then that it wasn't, and made the appropriate play. But you got to be careful. Max V is unlike every other card in a dash deck, but at the same time, Max V has such a high investment cost. Like, you have to make sure everything is perfect. It's not as simple as taking your Tunic Pummel, right? You always know you can do that. Max V is a heavy investment, so therefore people will check that card way, way more often. That's a good read that you can get on whether the opponent has a Max V in Arsenal. As a dash player, basically, is how often are they checking that Arsenal. Very, very, very important. Also, the last one of the tails that we're going to go over, and then we're just going to talk about a couple things. Their attentiveness to the game while they're not in an active decision process. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's say they play an attack and I'm defending. Okay, if they're basically just twiddling their thumbs, kind of like looking around, looking at the roof, looking at the person next to them, that is a very strong sign that they are very strong. It basically is indicative of they are in a commanding, comfortable position. But it's important that they are not making a decision. Some people, while they think, are like going everywhere, looking at a bunch of different stuff, and that's a completely different scenario. Basically, he's declared the attack on me. I'm thinking on blocks. I'm in the tank. This tale revolves around what they are doing while I'm in the tank. What are they doing while I'm thinking? And that's what revolves around what if it's a close situation and they're not very comfortable or really far ahead, they're going to be paying very close attention to what I'm doing and stuff like that. But if they are way far ahead or have a really strong move, a good example of this is Michael Fang in the finals of the Pro Tour. He had a really strong play. Mara was thinking on blocks, and Michael was like sitting there like spinning a die or something. That is a perfect example of he's got this, right? He knows something enough to where he knows he's got this, right? It could be just the game state, right? Like he just knows that he's so far ahead. Or it could be the fact that, it could be the fact that he has like a really strong play lined up, maybe a pommel or something like that. Could we see more people start wearing sunglasses and hoodies at events? That would be hilarious. So the last one that I want to leave you guys with as far as like tails and stuff like that is posture. It's one of the most important. Posture can be both a tail or a baseline. So basically what you can do is you can say, okay, He has an elevated pulse. I can't tell if he's nervous or he's excited. You can use the posture as kind of your baseline. Is he slouching? Nobody's like excited with an elevated pulse and slouching. That like doesn't go hand in hand. That's very unnatural. Whereas nobody's like perked up, really good posture, but in a shitty situation. Like that doesn't make sense. So you can use the posture as your baseline for certain tails, is kind of the idea. That can give you a good example. Now, I told you like these tails and stuff, but like, what are some examples of ways you can leverage them to your advantage? Some of them are straightforward. Reading pummels, right? That's, you know, obvious. It could be their comfortable situation with maybe a pummel that you have. Maybe it's a situation where you could have pummel. They seem very calm, cool, collective, which would indicate that they have some type of counterplay, which could indicate whether you actually want to play your pummel or not. Stuff like that. It could be the example that I gave at Nats, where you don't know whether to attack going first, because you can get a read on whether they have a strong or weak hand and do whatever is conducive for that situation. Another one is if somebody is like saying no blocks really quickly, you can do things like maybe you're playing Fi and you're trying to like lava burst and then arsenal snatch. Well, if they're taking the damage really quickly, it's probably in your best interest to snap that lava burst and end with a snatch, because the likelihood of it hitting is very, very likely, right? And you're just trying to maximize the punishment for them trying to keep their cards. Situations like that are how we can kind of leverage leverage those that advantage against those people in those situations, right? So I will share the. Let me get caught up in chat. I think knowing your opponent outside of the game could help read your opponent in the game. That is a fact. That is why some people are just at it. What it does is it allows you to walk into the game with a baseline, right? So somebody that is difficult to read, but I think I can read him, is Lucas Oswald. He is like a confident person, right? And I told you at the beginning that that's one of the strongest kind of like diversions, is by a player being confident. But at the same time, it's not the end all be all. It's still possible. But I 100% agree with you, Jason, that that knowing the person definitely helps. Definitely helps. It's why I banter the whole game in a joking way, winning or losing, and it's hard to read me. And that's a great point. And that's why I said at the beginning, the reason that I engage in banter is not to increase my read potential or whatever the case may be. It actively kind of makes it worse, because the way you get reads on people is by reading their reaction to the game. Anytime you engage in banter, you're not engaging in the game, right? You're engaging with the person, which are total different reads, right? So if you do play against me, please engage in the banter. It's not to seek an advantage or anything like that. I'm just trying to have a good time. It's the way that I enjoy the game the most, and most other people seem to agree. But yeah, I do agree 100%. I think the more you engage in banter, the less reads you can get. Just because people are focused on both interacting and the game, and you're constantly going in between, and it's hard to establish that baseline. 100% agree. And sand cover stopping pummels is going to be missed. Yep, when you're a Bolton gamer. Jason, are you bringing Bolton to the 20K? I think it's a good pick. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's like a really good pick, actually. I'll tell you what, Jason. I'll tell you when you draw Lumina, though. I'll tell you real quick. So the one person that I have not, and I've played them several times in tournaments, and I've never been able to get a read on them, is Levi Rauch. I can't do it. I can't. I've tried several times, only to be disappointed. I'm actually going to tell a little story about the last game that Levi and I played. That might be somewhat true, Quad. Might be somewhat. So I played Levi at the basically we played at the PTI event in Chicago, the Chicago Battle Hardened that Rhea won. It was the PTI event that followed. I got matched into Levi. Okay, and Levi loves to engage in the banter, so we're going back and forth. We're joking, we're laughing. There's a judge standing right next to us. He's having a ball. Just everybody was having a good time. We were joking and stuff. And we come to this crossroads, right? Of he has a situation where he's presented a Bolton shot for 7 with 1 pump on it and still has like, I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 cards in his hand. Maybe it was 2 cards and tunic counter. I'm not entirely sure. I don't remember the exact game state. What I do remember is it was very important for me to get it right on whether to disrespect the Bolton shot or basically play around it, because he had already, I think he already activated Death Dealer, and they did not have access to Bullseye Bracers. It had already been banned or suspended. So it's one of those situations where, like, if I play around it, it costs me a whole extra card. But if I don't and he doesn't have it, then he's got no way to like load, right? So the premise of the situation is, does he have Rain Razors or not? That's the equation, right? I'm trying to figure it out. So he presents the attack, and I start talking to him. I'm like, Levi, you got this Rain Razors? You got it? And he goes, oh, in these situations, I always have it. And I was like, wait a second. One of the things that you learn in poker is the most common reaction when somebody will engage in talk with you about a situation. It more often than not, they will present the opposite of what they want to happen, right? Does that make sense? So that you will like basically not believe them, because it goes off of the premise that they are presenting information that is not advantageous to them. So therefore you're supposed to distrust it, right? That's like the premise of it. Very common in poker, right? Another very common tell. So he said that to me, and I was like, the judge was standing there like listening. I look at him, I go, Levi, I've played too much poker for this shit. I've been in this situation before. You're telling me that because you don't have it, and you want that extra card out of my hand. So I'm blocking 7, and he slaps down that Rain Razors and got my ass. I lost that game. we lost that one. But I've played him, I think, 2 or 3 times in actual like competitive tournaments, and I've just never he's just like cool, calm, collected. I've just never been. I'm very good at just finding one little thing, but I have not. I have not. I mean, I remember even I used to play a lot of matches with Smoke, and he was always like the Icelander guy that I practiced into, And I couldn't tell you how many times he would have hypothermia in his arsenal. I'd be like, "Look, you got it." And we were playing on TTS. We weren't even like in person, right? and yeah, like there's just certain things that you can do. Obviously, there's like game mechanic ways to identify certain actions, like how long they've been sitting on an arsenal and stuff like that. Like there are those things, and those things should not be discounted. But if you combine the mechanic aspect of the game and like the time situations of the game, and you combine them with tails, you can really get strong decision points that you can take action on. And that's basically all that I had for this topic. I hope everybody, yeah, you knew my arsenal more than I did. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I just have a knack for it. I don't know, but I enjoy knowing things, so I'm not gonna question it too much. But uh, I that's gonna conclude this portion of the stream. The game plan is next. I'm gonna talk a little bit about Icelander's departure and the meta. We're gonna spend about 15 minutes on that, and then we're gonna play a game or two. I'm gonna show not a new deck. Well, I'll leave it up to chat. Do you want to see Hatchet's Dory or do you want to see Fi? I'll play 2 games or so. Just let me know in chat what you want to see, and I'll just pick whatever people want more. We can either play Fi or we can do something a little different and play some Hatchet's Dory. I'll let chat decide. But we're going to spend about 10 minutes or so just discussing the meta and kind of what to expect on the changes. Maybe you're going to the 20K this weekend, which I will be at. If you see me there, please say, hey, always enjoy those conversations. Or maybe you're going to the Orlando Battle Hard, and I think there's one more the weekend after. I forget where. I think it's somewhere in Europe. And then I think we're done for quite some time as far as like competitive picks, right? Or competitive events. So yeah, Icelander leaving the meta. What does that translate to? Obviously, there's the obvious part of nobody's packing extra blues. I will be. Yeah, Smoke said hatchets with the run through. Oh my god. Okay, there's a story behind that one. So this deck is like very old. I've been working on this one on and off for like a year. And Smoke was one of the first people that I ran it into. And it was like right when I built the deck. I was like, Smoke, I got to figure out if this thing could beat Icelander. And he goes, okay. So we load up a game, and he just like the third turn, he goes, I play run through on one of the hatchets. And he goes, bro, you can't do that. It's not a sword. And I said, oh shit. Let me change that real quick. Pro tip. While you're reading your opponent, read your cards too. Yeah, I did play run through on a hatchet, or I attempted to, and he very shortly corrected me and said, no, can't do that. I just thought it was copy 4 through 6 of Yellow Blade Runner. That's what I thought, but I guess not. It's got to be a sword. So yeah, people get freed up on some sideboard slots in the meta. This could be in the form of cutting a couple blues. It could be in the form of cutting a B. I will admit, I have in a lot of my decks, I'm one of those people where I have like a series of like running lists that I like try to update and maintain and like keep them competitive or up to date. And as I was making my rounds through my running list, I was like, I found myself actually adding Spell Void and more AB for Kano. Because I'm going to be honest, I just had like, I basically just had sideboard slots that I honestly did not know what to do with. And so with Icelander leaving the format in a lot of my lists, not all of them, but a lot of them, I found myself adding AB and Spell Void. When the general consensus would be like, "Oh yeah, why would you keep playing AB if only Kano's out there?" Um, so like that's the thing, Siphon, right? Like it is in a lot of my list, I actually upped the AB and Spell Void count specifically because I just didn't have anything else to use the slots on. Because I didn't have to run E-Pots or anything like that for Icelander and cut down on the blues and things like that. So with obviously Fi gets a lot better, right? Everybody kind of knew that. That's kind of like where everybody's head went to first. Was okay, no ice. That means linear aggro decks get a lot stronger, and there is some validity to that statement. It's a very conducive environment for both Katsu and Fi. Also, you have decks like what else? Bolton. Let's talk about Bolton for a sec. Let's talk about Bolton. Okay, if you play Bolton, you're never beating a Dromai. Like you just are not. You are just not beating Dromai as Bolton. It's like actually impossible. I wouldn't say impossible. It's just like super unfavored. But other than Dromai, tell me one bad matchup that Bolton has. Like let me know. Like honest question. Like good into the ninjas because if you can ever reach combo, which consistently you can, they're all attack actions most of their decks, so it pumps your sabers and your hero ability, and basically you get multiple hits and you just run away with the game. So if you ever combo, you win. And it's pretty consistent because your beacon goes and fetches your Lumina, right? You're good against Dash for the same reason. Dash does have a tool like Pulse Wave Harpoon to kind of counter that. I will admit Azalea is kind of iffy. You do run a lot of D-Reacts. You run actually a shit ton of them. You run the Soul Shields. You run the Sinks, the Fates. Some people run Oasis. Some people run Shunts. There's just a lot of D-Reacts in the list. But I will admit the first Seek and Destroy or Inertia token you get, it can be game ending, but you just save your armor for those situations. And also, those effects do not affect you on the combo turn. So they have to hit you on the turn before, not on the turn you're trying to go. So, like, the matchup is perfectly fine as long as you can two-step the Seek and Destroy and the Inertia. Frailty is not so much a problem because, like, I think Lace of Frailty is like the least played of the three pumps. Of course, you have Codex of Frailty though, but that's just something that it is what it is. And so you're good against Mechanologists because once again they're full of attacks. Their cards effectively block for 2. They do have Pulse Wave Harpoon. You have to be careful around that one. It's a very dangerous card, but one that can be mitigated. So other than that, we talked about Azalea. Everything else is like completely your favorite into Bravo for the same reason. I'm not talking about Decimator. I'm talking about more of like a Raiden Saber switch deck. Somebody in the chat mentioned, why are people low on Azuri when she has some great on hits against Aggro? Um, I thought that Azuri during the Worlds meta was one of the worst decks to bring to Worlds. I firmly believed that Azuri was one of the worst decks that you could bring. However, with Icelander leaving the format, I do see legit reasons on why you could bring Azuri. The question you have to ask yourself is, can you routinely beat Phi and Mechanologist? If you can, which I know Azuri is favored into Dash.io, I don't think Azuri is like hugely favored into Phi. I think Phi can just push better numbers and never Arsenal, and that be enough. I think that's a solid game plan for Phi. So like, you know, but if there was tech out there that could fix that matchup, then maybe. But because you're losing the Dromai matchup, right? I know some people say it's not that against a good Dromai, you're losing that matchup. And Dromai is not gone. Like, I know people are thinking that they're gonna run and hide because of Phi and stuff like that. Some will, but a lot won't. A lot are gonna stay true to it and keep playing it. So, in summary, I think Bolton is a legit choice. I think for the first time ever, I've actually considered playing the deck. And that's with Josh being on the team, right? I've never considered like, oh man, this might be the time for Bolton. No, I've always been like, all right, Josh, you could play it, but I ain't touching it. But this time, it's very close. It's very close. So yeah. Other than that, what are some meta contention? Max seems like a good pick. You just play kind of like the Chris's list. Looks phenomenal. Just efficient boost attacks. You have the pivot plan. OG Dash seems like a solid pick. You're kind of like super 50-50 into the ninjas, basically. It's probably like one of the most 50-50 matchups out there. And you're good into Bravo. You're good into bad into Azuri. You're bad into Bolton. You're bad into Azalea, which is kind of unfortunate. Yeah, I'll share a Phi list. Yeah. Other than that, yeah, like those are like the top. Now Bravo, let's talk about Bravo, which is more than likely what I'll be playing at the 20K. Bravo's in a good spot. I think his only two bad matchups in the current situation are basically Kano and OG Dash. I think are like Bravo's only two bad matchups. Have we talked about how all the good illusionist players have the innate ability to get their one-time read? Where once per game, they can soul read if their opponent has a popper. Well, rather than a hero-based meta, what are some viable strategies to play at the moment? Aggro and mid-range. Well, that's actually a very good question. Let's talk about that for a second. Yeah, Chris did a deck tech. I don't remember on what YouTube channel, but he played Max at Worlds, and he did a deck tech on it, like a video, showed all the cards, no secrets. Feel free to look for that. Just type in like Max Worlds in YouTube or something. It'll probably come up. So let's talk about that. Instead of a hero-based meta, let's talk about that. That's a very good question. So you have to decide like which lane you're going to participate in. Are you going to participate in the aggro lane? Are you going to participate in the mid range? And then I don't think control exists at the moment for the first time in a long time. Like if you're bringing what do they call it, slab dash or whatever, I think you're Chris Lally. Um, the person who got second at last Worlds. Um, he so if you bring like Slapdash to any tournament in the near future, I think you're kind of throwing because if they're on any type of like consistent file list, they're just going to run you over. Um, so like I just don't think that type of list holds a lot of game in a heavy aggro meta because you just can't effectively block everything out and you don't do anything innately powerful enough to justify it. Or you do, but it takes too long to get there. And decks are not giving you the time to get to a certain point. So I think officially control is dead. I think you have to say, are you going to operate in the realm of aggro or mid range? Now, let's give some examples of what those look like. Okay. Aggro is obviously going to be both ninjas, maybe boost dash would probably be fit more in mid range. Probably be like Kano, Azalea, the ninjas. Dromai, I would say, is more of an aggro deck now if they want to compete with the um, Slab Dash or Turtle Dash, Tree Frog Dash, whatever you want to call it. Easton Douglas list, basically, at Worlds. So if those are your aggro choices, you have to have a very good reason on why you're playing that aggro hero. Okay. One of the things I've always told myself is the worst choice you can make is always bringing the second or third best aggro deck. I think you just need, if you're going to play an aggro deck, I think you just need to play the best one. It's as simple as that. You can get into like level 2 and stuff like that, but like overall, I think if you just play the best aggro deck, you're going to do better if you're deciding to play aggro. Now, there's a unique situation where, like, I think the best aggro deck is Fi, and you have decks like Azalea and Katsu kind of counter Fi, but they're still aggro decks. The problem is I think you lose for what you gain in that matchup. I think you lose a lot elsewhere. But I mean, it could be a calculated decision. If you think 30% of the room is going to be Fi, then it's a great choice. But if that doesn't happen and you don't get those gem pairings, then you're really going to pay the price for bringing the second or third fastest deck, right? So that's just something that you have to keep in mind, right? Now, mid range can take form of like so many different things. It could be a slower version of Dromite, one that's not necessarily trying to outrace the ninjas, but just operate on the axis of value and things like that. I think that's going to be a little bit worse in that matchup. I think, I think you really got to race them. The more time you give them, I think you're going to get blown out, especially if they're the stronger, if you're dealing with stronger players. I think the Dromai versus Aggro match, I think the worse the opponent is, I think the more conducive it is to prolong the game. But the better they are, you want to shorten the game. So mid-range can take the form of Bravo. Bravo is a good example. Azuri, Max would be mid-range. Bolton would be mid-range, although it's kind of mid-range combo. And those are going to kind of attempt to pick on the aggro decks. Because you can look at a situation like Fi and Bravo. Like you're like, oh yeah, if Bravo runs Crush the Week, it's like the freest game. It's not. Let me tell you that. I don't think like either one's particularly favored. It's pretty like 50-50 maybe, even with Crush the Weeks. Just because they can push a lot of damage out of nowhere, and if you don't get a disruptive hand, you're kind of just sitting there with your hands in your pocket. And So you have to pick which lane you're going to be in. In mid range, you can kind of pick anything, and you can like justify it. Whereas aggro, I really think you just need to pick the deck that produces the most damage the most consistently, which I believe is fine. Katsu has higher ceilings, but way lower lows. Azalea is Azalea, right? You have warmongers and stuff like that that can take your legs out from under you, and also you can just draw a lot of bad hands in Azalea. It's just a symptom of it. Whereas Fi, like, yes, there are some pooper hands, right? Like it can happen. You can draw a bad hand, but those are few and far between. So, yeah, if you're gonna operate in mid range, I think there's a lot of validity in all of the choices that you can pick in that category. However, aggro, I think you just got to pick the best one. I think you just got to pick the best one. Mid range, just pick what you want to be better into. So if you think there's going to be a lot of Bravo, bring Dash. If you think there's a lot of Phi, maybe bring Dash IO. Situation like that, or whatever the case may be. Bring Bolton. If you can figure out a solid plan for Azuri, bring that. You know, whatever you want to be better into, you can calculate that in the mid-range category. Okay, so we talked about the meta. We talked about also don't sleep on Leviah. I think Leviah is a pretty good pick right now. I don't think there's any reason to play Rhinar anymore because as the format speeds up, Intimidate loses its value. Therefore, there's just playing Leviah equals better than Rhinar. What is even a combo deck these days? That would refer to like Saber's Bolton, I think, is like the only combo deck that exists right now that I can think of. If you're not familiar with combo Sabers, they pop Courage of Blade Hold, which makes their sword swings free for the turn. They pop Gallantry Gold, which gives you +1 on all your swings. They play 2 Lumina Ascensions, which allows them to swing with each weapon more than one time. And they just swing their swords a bunch of times and kill you. So that's kind of like that combo. That's the only... Yeah, Kano's also a combo. That's a fair point. Kano would also be a combo deck. Barraging Beatdown combo Axe Rhinar. No. False. Believe it or not, me personally, I would not consider Katsu a combo deck, even though he usually utilizes the keyword combo the most. I think he is a mid-range hero at heart, kind of like sets up. He's an inconsistent aggro deck kind of situation where he has big turns, but you're not going like all in on the turns. You're kind of like just blocking with your shit hands and, you know, being aggressive on your good hands. I don't consider that combo. You can make the argument if you wanted, maybe. But yeah. So let's get into some games. Somebody asked for a file list earlier. This is currently what I'm playing. I can't take credit for the full list because it was built by what's his name? Lupin? I think it was. I don't know his name exactly, but the Lupin guy. Sorry if I messed that up. This was like his base list, and I changed approximately 7 cards, maybe. And so, like, you know, the idea was his, and this is basically what I'm running now for the file list. Basically, I chose Amnesia. You could go Erase Face in this slot if you want to hedge more into mech than Katsu. I would rather hedge into Katsu because I think the mech's already decent, whereas Katsu matchup is horrible. Take the spell void out. Man, I bumped it up to spell void 2, bro. I'm telling you, bro. I found that like in most of my decks, I think that yeah, Lupin Fiasco. That sounds right. That's the guy. I took his list and changed about 6 or 7 cards. So credit goes to him for the list. Take the spell void out. Nope, can't do. I think that Kano's in a decent spot, and you have to pay your respects. So I would, and with Spell Void 2 and AB1, I think it makes this matchup super favorable into Kano. And also, like, there's just nothing else that I want. Like, this is your core aggro 60. You got your D-React package for Bravo, and you have an Amnesia for Katsu, and this for the Mirror. Like, what else do you need? Is kind of my thought process. Yeah, don't play Spell Void. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see about it. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. I guess we'll go ahead and play this since we already got this list up. We can also. It's 9:30. I tell you what, we'll do one game on this list and we'll do one game on the Hatchet story. So if you want to see Hatchet story, hang on a minute and we'll get into it. This round's on me. I would love to have it in this deck, but the problem is it doesn't cost 0, which means Kadachi's is a no-go. So yeah, that's the only reason why I would not run it in this specific list. We don't. Yeah, we ended up cutting to that in the main, so we just run like this, easy peasy. Here we go. Okay. Do we get any damage in? We have 1 attack for 3 and then 2 attacks for 2, which means no matter what they have in their hand, it's very unlikely that we get a lot of chip damage in unless we burn this, which is kind of lackluster. So in this situation, we're just going to pass. We're in Arsenal. Is the Dory, Blitz, or CC? It is classic constructed. I'm assuming they're getting red in the ledger. Yep. Which means if they have a pump, we're just gonna have to take the turn off. Just is what it is. Yep. This is for 8, so there is a situation where we actually can defensive Art of War from here, which because we can't do anything, I think it's actually advantageous. So what we can do is we'll just do +1 and defend with cards from Arsenal. And that'll allow us to go here and there. We're still going to take 1, and then we'll just Arsenal the card. Since they demanded agency, you know, we get to keep our life total. They got rid of one of their best cards, and we just Arsenal this. It's fine. Also, we have a good attack, so if we didn't have a good attack in there, I would say that we would have to play this to kind of counter Codex, but I think we're fine just arsenaling this for a bigger turn. Hand was terrible, but we made the best we could out of it. We made the best we could. And that's also why I know a lot of people would have arsenaled the Art of War, but it's that exact situation why I like to arsenal the attack when I'm holding Art of War. And I know I'm holding Art of War. Drill shot with an aim counter. I don't think we care. Yeah, they can have it. So here we're going to go brand first into the Ravenous Rabble, which is going to make it a Draconic Chain Link, which means we can go a little bit longer before presenting this. So what we can do is this will probably hit, which is fine. We're going to pass on that. We're going to turn this off in the meantime. There's a good chance that we may actually use it, but we will see. We have Snatch on top. That's something that we have to keep in mind. Salt the Wound is a base of 2. We need to trigger Shuko to get value. Okay, with that delayed response, it seems like they might have a D-react. It is possible. Blocking 6 on a headlong would be ambitious, to say the least. Also, him putting 2 cards in front means that he has another dead card, which means that when we pop the Phoenix, we have to go here, right? And he's going to block this. More than likely. Because he's already indicated that he's willing to give a second card. But if he doesn't, we'll go ahead and pop this. And if not, we'll pop it on the Phoenix Flame. Or we just get more cards. Yep, that was what we thought. And we're going to go reach and get that Phoenix Flame. This is our first tack under 2, so Shuko's not triggering. But we are going to go ahead and reach. This will be 4 that have hit. So we will trigger this, go get a Salt, and lay it. Which will get the Shuko. So we're getting 7 out of our pouncing links, which is exactly where we want to be. We got him down to a 3-card. 3-card hand, and we are several life behind. We are arsenaling a good target where we can kind of mid-range a little bit, kind of like block with an attack or 2 and kind of yeet that out for this exact situation. So this is a pretty good situation where we can just block here and here, send it, and kind of try this evolution again. There is a decision point here. We can give the armor, which basically gets a card worth of value, and them off of an arsenal, which means that they have the potential to brick, which I am kind of in favor of in this situation. We can give this and then present the CNC, but it's actually a bad exchange because we're threatening the card that we gave them for free, which just is not good math. So I actually like giving the armor here. The hand's not amazing. This gets them off of an arsenal. And then we'll just pass. And we'll say do it again. And if they can't, then we'll see. Bolton shot. Yep. That means he has a Rain Razors more than likely. Pre-med. Rebel. Okay, we have to look at our hand and see what we're doing. This card's becoming kind of inconvenient. We're never blocking this rabble. No shot. Deadeye, this does not have a counter on it, so it's basically nice. So they just presented 12 damage on their 4-card hand, which is... I would have thrown the CNC and let it hit. I mean, it felt like bad math to let it hit and then threaten the card that we gave them. Why not just keep the card and not give them the card kind of situation. Because we're already 2 red in the ledgers down and a remorseless, so like those are the most high value targets. So the armor is losing value every single day beyond that point. In this situation particularly, it kind of sucks, I'm not going to lie. We can play this into this, pitch this into this, into this. Seems like our best line. It's not great. Worst math to break your arsenal for 2 turns. Well, I didn't know I wouldn't see a blue. If we have a blue here, this is like perfectly fine. So we'll just start with this. Sure. Do. I like just laying down the lava burst since we have the guaranteed wave. I kind of like the lava burst, to be honest. But I guess there's a valid point to, I mean, the more you push life total down, the less relevant CNC becomes. So I understand that argument. Sleep Dart, which is no hero ability, that's fine. Yep, we just take 7 here. Brand on top. We have a guaranteed starter, which means we don't need to hold anything back. And then we eat it. Hey, we've pushed the life total down while forcing cards here, which means we should be good on tempo. We still have snaps for the awkward, like double snatch hand. So we're perfectly fine here in this situation. Seek Destroyed is irrelevant. We don't have anything. And we're trying to kill anyway. Pitching a red into that is not very good. So what's he getting? Well, definitely red in the ledger, right? A drill shot? Oh, because he doesn't have any floating. That's unfortunate because we don't give a damn about that. Like actually. So what we can do is I think we actually get Lava Burst. Discard the Enlightened Strike. We can go mounting brand, blade, Phoenix Flame, Lava Burst. So we're not grabbing CNC. That's a trap. That is a trap. I think it's Lava Burst. And then discard the strike. That seems like the best option. And then we just take that. And that pretty much locks the game up. Because we have another 2. And then a 1. Which he has to give armor. And then a 4, which will be the last card in armor. Or if it's a 2 block, it's everything. Or it's a no block. Okay. So we got there. That's the FI deck in the quote unquote unfavored matchup. I don't think it's actually that unfavored. They did break that one hand, I will admit. Of course, we had to pitch our Art of War and do a defensive Art of War. So I mean, we weren't doing anything exciting, but you know, it is what it is. We'll go to the Axis Dory. This is what we'll be playing. For those of you that are interested, let's go ahead and plug that in. This matchup actually does very well into Fi. Basically, if they run Kodachis into you, you can basically always turn off Mask of Momentum if they are running that. So that is pretty good. Other than that, Azalea, this matchup's okay. We do have a D-React package that's decent, but like it still can be a little rough depending on the situation. But we'll see. We'll see how we can fare. Basically, the whole premise of this deck is to leverage as much value from Findell's Spring Tunic as we possibly can. Is kind of the idea. So what we're going to do is hit and run is the highest value Arsenal target, but against Azalea, we obviously have to Arsenal sink below. So what we're going to do is just try to get through as many cards while just keeping these two. So we'll go here, pitching this. Trying to filter to something a little bit better. Double sigil. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. We are behind. We are behind. That's a big ass Bolton shot. That's okay. We'll just give it all. Actually, we have to D-react. What we want to try to do is Arsenal this. Since we know we're not swinging next turn, we want to keep the boots fresh. And then we'll just Arsenal this, and then we're just waiting on a Blade Runner is what we're trying to do. And Tunic counter on 3 is the name of the game. So we have a Spoils of War, which is good. So we're just blocking 2 cards, holding a blue, spoils, axe, hit and run, counter, axe, and we go for a triple swing. So we're going to block 6, 7 value, and then just extract as much as we can in that one turn, assuming that we can actively stop this. We don't give a shit about this one. We give a shit about the next one. And we will go ahead and... I guess we missed value on the boots. I thought he had a pump on it. Is why I kept... But that'll be my mistake. So we missed out on 1 value. Okay, so we just go spoils, pitch, we go to the swing. This will trigger Dory. So now we can swing this axe again. Then we're going to put hit and run in the middle, which will give this one go again, come in for 6. It already has go again, which means we'll Tunic counter for another 3. There's no advantage that we can accumulate from copper, but we do have 6 of it. And then we have a same situation here, but because the glint is free, we get to do it on a without the Tunic counter. So this kind of showcases what the deck can actually do. So this is 8, which is fine. We'll just block here, here, and here. And then we'll do the same thing. We will go swing. We'll glint. Not the best value because we didn't get a block, but I really didn't expect him to get the block. That's okay. Actually, that kind of sucks because that does take away our extra swing, which means we actually don't play the hit and run. Because if it did hit, we wouldn't be able to trigger Dory and actually use it. So that would just mean that that's a 3 pump, which is not quite good enough. Not quite good enough. But we do refresh the boots, which is great. We're a little bit ahead on life. A little behind on tempo, but that's okay. Just join. No one Dory uses axe. No, not the usual swords. I've never really enjoyed Dawnblade Dory. I've always played Axis Dory. I think with Icelander leaving the format, I think this is the first opportunity that it's actually a decent choice. All right, so we're coming in for 8, which means we're going to block here, here, and the D-React. We're going to keep that on top because that's the piece that we need for the next turn when we try to do the hit and run line. So in this case, we're just going to do the 2-step, right? We just swing axe, play the Blade Runner. So if we do the math behind this transaction, we invested 2 cards to swing 2, and then 5, which is 7, and heal 1, which is 8. So it's a 2-card 8 on a yellow. If it's red, it's a 2-card 9. So we're just trying to win on the basis of value by making plays like that, and just outvaluing. Simple as that. We drew no blue, which is really bad, but we could. I think because we have the pieces that we need, it is possibly worth the risk of gambling. But then again, it seems kind of scuffed. I think what we're gonna do is like really gamble. I think we're gonna go here and here, and then sink away the nourishing. This is gambling, but we need that blue. This is okay. It's not blue. So what it means is we just have to use the tunic counter to do the normal play that we do. We don't get to use the hit and run. That's okay. In that situation, I probably would have rather had the nourishing instead of the Blade Runner. But my thought process was if we do rip the blue, then it was kind of, I guess I should have done it the opposite way. Yeah. Well, no, I should, because if I rip the blue, I'm trying to play the hit and run. So I think, yeah, I think that line was correct. We don't care about this 4, but our hand is kind of garbage, so I am going to go ahead and give a card here. And then I'm pretty sure he's just going to play this. Or dominate. That's fine too. Okay, so in this situation, it is going to hit, which is fine. We'll just do that. Take the blood rot. Do the old 2-step. Just double hatchet. Get 2 for 8s. Heal on the boots. We take a little bit of damage there. We're still ahead on life. Still got some tempo. We're doing okay. Lackluster hand here a little bit, but wait, did he load Death Dealer draw and then decide to... Okay. Why would you Bullseye Bracers first? I think it's because he drew the top card, loved it, and wants to reload and dominate this. So I'm blocking 6 because his hand kind of sucks anyway. Your move. Yep. Just going to block 6. Wait another turn. Won't have to worry about any more copies of that card, which is phenomenal. And this is what we call the nut. I think he's out of Read the Ledgers. We just want to not see a Codex of Frailty. That's the main thing. Because we lose 3 value on the Frailty. It's not the end of the world, but... Yeah, I know he never loaded. That's why it looks so sus. Oh, you're saying he never saw the top card. I got you. Put a card on top of the deck. Okay, he passed. So we lost boots on value on the boots, but that's okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go Warrior's Valor, pitch, spill blood, swing. And because he doesn't have a direct in Arsenal, and we know that, that means this can't be prevented. Does that kill it? No, because it doesn't have go again at this current moment in time, so this does not trigger. Warrior's Valor is broken. Okay. And then we go here and then go for the Bracer play. No, we don't want to use our tunic counter. We'll keep it for next turn just in case we need the resource. And this has go again for 8, and then we'll swing again for 5. Which should put us in a pretty good spot. We still got a couple armor. We got tunic counter up, ready to go. This puts him at 3 if he doesn't block. So we're in a decent spot. Thank God we kept the tunic counter because I'm assuming you're snapping this. Looks like Codex play, maybe. Sleep Dart, okay. E-Strike, and you have the 1 floating. So we have all the information we need. There's no pump on this. This has go again, so we can go 4 here. And then 5 there. Yep. To the bottom. We'll keep that on top because it's a win con this situation. Maybe we sunk our only blue. That would kind of suck. But we drew the all red hand, so I'm pretty confident on my ability to get blues. We go and play the Blade Runner. That makes this one come in for 6, which is at least 2 cards no matter how you cut it. Even if, well, I guess you could have a sink below or something here. Yep. Which I'm more than okay. He's at 1 now. We got our blue. So we'll just block 8 here and try to kill. Yep, they basically just never get a turn ever again. If they get a turn, it's just always going to be kind of lackluster. Well, give me that D-reactor game. Okay. So that one was like super comfortable. It kind of showed the consistency, the value premise of the deck. Just trying to kind of extend the games a little bit. Nothing crazy. We'll play one more on it. Just came in. Dory. What stopped Hatchet Dory before? Really? Why throw the spilled blood? Because I didn't need it. Was the idea. We'll go second. This matchup is preferred. Oh, he doesn't want to do it again. Do you want to do it this time? Do. What? Huh. How do I get punished here? He could have Codex after this, close the chain, get this back, fire it. I don't have an attack in graveyard, so I don't have to discard. So basically what I need to do is block with anything that doesn't say go again, give boots, because we'll replenish it on the following turn, and say better have it. Okay. This is not a great hand. It is exploited pretty easily. But in doing so, it does get some tempo because he's going to have to block this with 2 cards if he does want to shut the turn down. He did not, so we actually get the swing, which replenishes the boots, which gives us more health. We like it. Yeah, Oldham definitely stopped it. This kind of feels like Blitz, Kasai, Quicksilver. Well, you're just operating on the basis of value. It's that simple. It can very routinely extract 15 value from each hand. You can block 6, get 9, and then you can always turn Tunic Counter into like 3 value in most cases. It's pretty good. Is it like the best thing ever? Probably not, but like it's a solid deck. Please come in for no more than 9. Oh, that's perfect. We get to get the double sync on and filter for a go again card. Not a go again card. Filter again. That's a go again card. Give me 2 cards. Good job. Arsenal high value target. And there we go. We have the blue and the go again. So we're set up to extract 3 value from the Tunic counter, just like we want. So we're just going to try to mitigate a little bit here. This has go again, which is sketch as fuck, which means he has, unfortunately, the Codex, more than likely. Nope. This is good for us. We did not get any frailty. There's no hidden information, so we'll just block here, and we actually get to keep the the D react for the following turn, just in case. And you just block, you engage in these longer turn cycles, you get a lot of value. I mean, it's solid. And here's the situation that you put your opponent in. If they block this one, then this one's going to get pumped all the way to 6. So they basically have to give up their whole hand both times and you not have a reaction to stop the 3 swings, which kind of goes into your game plan anyway. And so now we just pull ahead. We have tempo. We're ahead. We're healing our armor. Like, just everything is going the way we want it to. So we are just going to... This hand does kind of suck. We're going to risk it for a blue. Question is, we get 2 looks if we use that. I kind of want to feel risky. I want to sink the yellow for a blue and then arsenal the other Blade Runner. If we rip a red, though, our turn is literally hatchet arsenal, which is a value of 2. If we get a blue here, then all we have is a shitty arsenal. Okay, so we have to sink one of the Blade Runners. It just makes more like mathematical. Oh shit, I can't arsenal from... Whoops. Which means we need to go back and I need to sink it away. Yeah, that doesn't make as much sense. So that means we actually block this one. Oh, that's the play. And then we... Yeah, this is tough. Because we don't want to arsenal with the... Feels bad, but we are kind of ahead. Never punished? And then we have an actual decision to make. We have to indicate whether swinging this card for 3 right now is worth over arsenaling it. And I say it's not. I think it's worth more than 3 because it just enables a 2-card exchange. So I'm going to actually pass and just arsenal that. Okay, we have 8 here, which is a 3-card exchange and unfortunate, but we're pretty far ahead. We can Blade Runner there. We have to block this because it's got Blood Rot and it's red in the ledger. So we're just gonna swing hatchet and win the turn cycle. Oh, we got a card. That's good for us. This is a really good situation. Take it. In this situation, let me count my resources. 3 swings is 3. That's a blue accounted for. Then we have to pay for this. Or wait, 2 swings. This is a blue. And then pay for this and bracers. So we can do all this. We're not going to block with the dynamos, so that way they'll be turned on the next turn. Is our goal. So he's going to put the -1 counter on it, which is fine. But if we block with it right now, there'll be 2 -1 counters on it, which does actually matter. And this also plays around the situation where he blocks both hatchets, which he didn't do anyway. We'll put the extra resource there, and then we're just going to yeet this. This both heals the dynamos and sets us up on the good hand next turn. And he's down 2 red in the ledgers, so it's very unlikely we get punished for it. Pretty good one. Not the best. It's a little expensive. Tunic counter would be amazing right now, but what can you do? Looks like we're going to get dominated red ledger anyway. So, unfortunate. Yep, so we block with the least valuable card. In this situation, which would be... Let's see. We want to Arsenal the Fate for seeing for the... Oh, it doesn't matter. We have Seek and Destroy. So we literally have to block with the D-React because it's the higher number. I would love to kill him with Overpower, but it's not doable. If we had another blue, it'd be a very easy decision here. We do want to keep this in our deck, though, so we will elect to swing with this one. But we're still ahead. We're still comfortable. We got a little bit of armor from the boots. Okay. We're still in a commanding position, if you will. Okay, so why are we bullseye bracering here? You haven't played a Rain Razor yet. I'm not playing around it, so you can have it. Do your little rain or whatever you want. Tar Pit Trad on top, which means we're safe from Dominate unless he wants to draw it. Something that we have to be aware of. So he's got Tar Pit Trap, which is information. And he's not using it here. Okay. Huh. I guess we want to push more damage. And now he has to give 2 cards. We know a card in his hand is Tar Pit Trap. So we have an option here to swap this card out for something. It's not the worst card. But it does force him to play it, is the real point. And I think we need to get that card. Really. Okay, here's another 2. Or a 3. Give it to me now. Thank you. Once again, just trying to win on the basis of value. Easy as that. Don't be scared to die. What's his first swing? Yep. Cards, please. If you have any 2 blocks, that'd be 3. 3 cards. 2 block, 2 block, 1 time, 2 block. Or the D-React. Okay. Arsenal. And from this point, we can honestly just fatigue him, if we're being 100% honest. That hand didn't really kill him, which is unfortunate. But this is 2 cards. Whether he has 3 blocks or not. Okay. Yep, sure. Unhit dead. Yep, so that's 2 games where we were like pretty comfortable against Azalea. Definitely not a bad matchup. I definitely think we'll read Tar Pit. It says negate the on hit of the next, or no on hits on the next attack that hits if this card has go again. So yeah, the deck has legs for sure. I thought about bringing it to the Rumble, the 20K. Spillblood would have dominated, yes. But I have... Oh, Tar Pit says attack actions, doesn't it, Vero? Doesn't it? Spillblood would have dominated 100%. The problem is I only had 1 blue. And I couldn't pay for the go again in multiple attacks, right? And I also get blown out by a sync blow if I can't pay for the second attack. So we got that issue too. Yeah, it says attack action. You're right. It be like that. Well, I can't go much later because I do have to wake up pretty early in the morning and make the drive to the Realm 20K. Super excited to go. Looking forward to see everybody there. And yeah, that'll do it for me. I got to go build my deck. Or I'm bringing 2 decks. I'm bringing the door list that we saw in Bravo. So I'll play one of them. We'll see. We'll see what we play. But yeah, hope everybody enjoyed it. Hope the reading player discussion was of value. I know that there's so many times during so many games that it definitely helps me 100%. Yeah. So thanks everybody for joining me. Really do appreciate it.